Hi, Mr. Gary. We are the Spectacular Six. My name is Tengku, and my teammates.
I'm Abby.
I'm NG.
I'm Jasmine.
I'm Jatin.
And I'm Xuan.
And today we are going to pitch the movie Spider Man Into the Spider Verse.
Hi, I'm Abby and I'll be presenting about the first half of pre-production. This computer-generated animated film features a young boy named Miles Morales of Earth 1610 as he becomes the new Spider-Man and meets other Spider people from alternate dimensions to save New York City from Kingpin in a shared multiverse known as the Spider-Verse. We will be collaborating with Sony Pictures Animation, an American animation studio known for movies like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and The Smurf. Next, we have Columbia Pictures, an American film studio and production company, who produce movies such as Spider-Man, Monster House, and Ghostbusters. Lastly, the film will be in association with Marvel. Up next, we have the people who made this film possible. Starting from the left side, we have Peter Ramsey, Ronnie Roman, Bob Persichetti, Chris Lord, and Phil Miller. The group of professionals that was mentioned in the previous slide wanted to create a Spider-Man most of us can relate to, which brings us to Miles Morales. He's a 14-year-old kid who goes to boarding school and has two parents, a father who is a policeman and a mother who is a nurse, which is rare to find in the Spider-Man franchise. He's also African American and Latino, creating diversity and representation for the younger generations that watch the film. For the plot, he's bitten by a radioactive spider and given powers while hanging out with his uncle. He comes across Spider-Man in the middle of a battle, and a massive atom collider creates a rift between worlds, allowing a slew of spider people from other dimensions to enter ours. The spider people must prevent Kingpin and his sidekicks from reacting the collider, which could destroy all of their worlds. We wanted a movie which can challenge the audience to believe in themselves, and that anyone could be heroic and make a difference in the world. From this part of the script, Miles doesn't know how to be Spider-Man, which shows us that he's being doubtful of his abilities as he asks Peter for help on how to be Spider-Man. Moving on to the scene where Peter knows that Miles wants to be Spider-Man, but he can only teach him so much. In the end, he has to believe in himself in order to be Spider-Man he desires to be. Lastly, the turning point is when Miles' dad, Jefferson, comes to tell him that whatever he wants to be, he will be okay with it, which will be the last push Miles needs to finally accept that he is this universe Spider-Man and that he is in control of his own powers. Next, we have the storyboard, showing the part where Miles runs up the building and tries to jump down, but ends up walking down the staircase. He repeats the process one more time and eventually jumps, but falls instead. This can be an example of Miles trying to be Spider-Man, but not giving it his all. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Gary and my fellow classmates. Today, I would like to start by presenting to you our concept art. So, this is the earliest draft of the characters that we drew. So, first we have Peter Parker over here, then Miles Morales in the middle, and Gwen Stacy on the right here. She has a ring on her nose. Then we have our Green Goblin. We picture him as this, which is original to the comics. And Penny Parker, a different version of Spider-Man from Japan, where she has a huge robot, and the robot is technically Spider-Man. And then we have Mary Jane over here, and as you can see, she has curly hair. Then for the casting, we would like to propose Chris Pine as the blonde Peter Parker, who is the Miles Morales Dimensions Peter Parker, and he's like the perfect Spider-Man, the most heroic version out of the other versions of Spider-Man, and he has everything: gadgets, a wife, a steady job, and he's just perfect. And he loves being Spider-Man. And in this movie, he dies, so Miles Morales becomes the next Spider-Man. And why he was chosen is because in his previous roles, he acted as Kirk in the 2009 Star Trek franchise, and his role here was very heroic. He acted as a leader and even sacrificed his life in the sequel. Then for Peter B. Parker, we would like to cast Jake Johnson, because Jake Johnson has this type of voice that's very raspy, sounds older and lazy-ish and chill because Peter B. Parker is like an older, lazier version of Spider-Man, and he's also like kind of depressed because he faced through challenges in his life. And yeah, we think he's suitable for Peter B. Parker, and Peter B. Parker is like our original Spider-Man. And for Miles Morales, we will like Shamik Moore. He's a 25-year-old actor, and his voice actually sounded younger than his actual age, so that's why we feel he's suitable. Plus, he is an African descent actor, which suits Miles Morales because he's also half African American and half Mexican. And also for Gwen Stacy, we will like Haley Steinfeld. Because Gwen Stacy is an adventurous, smart, and cool and a sarcastic Spider Woman. So Haley Steinfeld is perfect because in her previous roles she acted in Pitch Perfect too, which is very diva-ish. So we think she's suitable as well, and she's also young. And for Liev Schreiber, we would like to cast him as the main villain in this movie, Kingpin. And reason why is that he did a menacing, stunning performance as Sabretooth in the 2009 X-Men Origins movie. And for the budget, our estimation is $90 million. Well, it's for to pay the salaries for the voice actors, and for the animation, as you can see on the right here, which my groupmate will explain further, and for the everything else. And now I would like to move to my other groupmates for the production section. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Angelina, and I'll be going over the parts of production here. So we have texturing, lighting, layout, modeling, rigging, animation, and voiceover. So for textures, we want to make the film look very comic influenced. So we will be layering 2D ink lines on top of 3D art so that we can give the characters a more hand-drawn look. And in textures, we will be using a technique called half toning. So this technique uses dots to create colors and gradients. And another technique we'll be using is called hatching so it'll be mostly crisscross lines to create shadows. Another texture we'll be using is a technique called Kirby Crackle. So this is derived from the Marvel artist Jack Kirby, who was known for his abstract dots. And this is to create the illusion of energy. And examples of textures we will be using in the film in the background itself would be, say for example, in like a very busy city scene. So we'll be using blobs of colors in the background to create the hustle and bustle of nightlife, as well as those color blobs in interior buildings as well. So for lighting, we'll be using very contrasting lighting. Say, for example, in this scene, it will be very friendly and warm when Miles is in the neighborhood he lives in, whereas in contrast, in the school he is transferred to, the colors and lightings get harsher because it is a more stressful and strict environment, very different compared to Miles' neighborhood. So lightings in different areas in New York are also very different. For example, Manhattan was an exaggeration of scale, lights, and brightness. So for example, in this scene, we're planning to have the lighting in the foreground considerably darker to put the main focus of the audience to the TV screen. So for the layout and modeling, the models of the buildings, as shown here, will be made 8 to 10 times larger than they should be, and this is to create the sense of size and scale of the city compared to Miles. So this is the raw models without rendering and the layout of it. And the one on the right here is the final shot. Another example here, the 3D model placement for a specific scene. Then you rotate it to the side and you get this. And so the bottom is the final shot.
Hi, I'm Rongxing. I'll be covering the process of rigging, animations, and voiceover. But before I start with the rigging, there is actually a very important process, which is the 3D modeling. Today I won't be covering much about this process because it's basically just a process where the animator brings out the 2D drawing character into a 3D world by using 3D software. So what is rigging? Digital riggings are virtual bones, joints, and muscle that allows model to move. It's kind of like a string on a marionette. For this film, they created a new visual language, where the language is one of those things we had to solve a lot of different ways. The creative director explained that it's so amazing how much one little line's for a furrow or a dimple can make you feel completely different about the expression. Form of line describe the shape of something, for example, a nose. The character designer make a library of drawings so that there is something that can make rules for the 3D models, where a certain head angle will look like this to the camera and make a whole bunch of poses that defined. The effect team will recreate those in 3D space with those rules of head angle to camera and then let the machine learning programs try and guess where those drawings will go. A person will correct it anytime it was wrong and slowly will teach the programs to make drawings that will find it redundant. Here are some of the examples. The first is the typical 3D models without any lines or furrow. The last one is the 3Ds with lines and lighting. You can definitely see the difference by blending 2D drawing lines to 3D together, and it has never been made before the films. Next, I'm going to talk about animation. This film had 177 animators on staff at one point, more than twice the typical animated films. To put that in perspective, the original Toy Story had just 27 animators. This film took 1 week to animate just 1 second of footage. It usually takes a week for 4 seconds, and it took them 1 year to just get 10 seconds of what they were happy with. The total shot count on Spider-Man verse is 2 to 3 times more shots higher than other animated films. For Spider-Man verse, instead of making the animation photorealistic, the creator wanted the movie to stand out on its own as something new for the viewers. As head of the character's animation, Josh Parrish put it, "Don't emulate the reality and don't make it a cartoon." To accomplish this, they used a number of different techniques that make Spider-Man was a groundbreaking films. So what kind of techniques has been applied to the films? There are 3 major techniques, which are frame rates, smear techniques, and misprint style. So let's talk about the frame rates. Animated films are typical 24 frames per second, and creating a different image for each frame is known as animating on ones. Spider-Man was broke the mold and animated much of the movies on twos as well, meaning that kept some of the image on screen for 2 frames, which make the animation feels the producer would describe it as crunchy. Each character pose lasts longer and is much more pronounced. In these scenes, both Miles and Peter are animated on twos, 12 poses per second, while the scenes was rendered on ones, 24 frames per second. So even though they are frozen for 2 frames, they are moving within the frames. Basically, they are all on animated twos, but offset from each other. The Spider-Man verse animators alternate between on twos and on ones depending on the nature of the scenes. That can make Miles seem fast or steal some shots on ones and struggle in others on twos. Sometimes he'll be on twos while others characters will on one. When they were singing through the forest, Miles is on twos because he's clumsy, while Peter P. Parker is on ones because he's more skilled. This style helped illustrate how Miles was slowly becoming more comfortable with his powers. Another major technique was how they chose not to use motion blur, a CGI trick which most new films use to soften the movement and make it more seems real. Instead, they use an old school technique called a smear. This was used a lot in early cartoons to create the sense of motion. If you look at the single frames, you will notice things like multiple limbs to create the illusions of motions. Here, Gwen is playing the drums, and you can see multiple hands and drumsticks. You can see multiple arms in some shots. There is another ways for artists to stimulate motion blur without rendering motion blur. The next one, misprint style. The filmmakers decided to use this misprint style in the films to create a depth of field instead of blurring the backgrounds. Throughout the whole films, they used this effects called chromatic separation. This is a common problem in lenses which occurs when colors are incorrectly reflected by the lens, resulting in a mismatch at the focal point where the colors do not combine as they should. They use CMYK offset throughout the films that is familiar in comic books and is actually being used as a form of motion blur as the camera is going by. From the example that I provided, you can see the background is kind of blurred, but they don't use any camera blur. But they do think makes feel far away, because they develop a different techniques for the offsets to deal with the depth of field. So these things will be more out of focus. It's basically just an offset where they took the image in 3D dimensions, space, and shifted it apart and repeated it on top of itself. The last part, voiceover. One of the most important process of productions where the voice actors make the character's personality come to life. Here are some sneak peek of characters Miles and Haley.
That's weird. My pants shrank. I think I hit puberty.
I'm Gwenda. Okay, then. I'll see you around.
So now let's deep dive into the post-production section. Music and sound. As for the sound designer composer for this movie, we are looking to get Daniel Pemberton on board. And also there will be a soundtrack album for this movie, which will be taken care by Republic Records. And few of the featuring artists on the album are Juice WRLD, Post Malone, Sway Lee, Nicki Minaj, and more artists as such. Heading the project in the sound editing are award-winning supervising sound editors Geoffrey G. Rube and Kurt Skulke from Sony Pictures. They are in charge to deliver sounds that are innovative, richly textured, and engrossing as the film's groundbreaking for its imagery. For this film, we are trying to create something different and unique in every frame of the film as far for the planning and composition goes. We are trying to make comic book come to life on screen. The thing that comic books does best is tell a lot of stories in a single image, which means every frame will be as dynamic as possible, so that's what we are seeking for this film. The video editing will be taken care by Robert Fisher Jr., the head editor from Sony Pictures. As for the animation and visual effects goes, that will be held by Sony Pictures Imagework, who had handled nearly all of Sony Pictures image animation prior films, as well as visual effects for all prior Spider-Man films, while the CGI and design team will be taken care by Sony Animation Pictures. The expected timeline this film to be completed is 3 to 4 years.
Next, I'll be in charge of the marketing strategy. First of all, the trailers. We're planning to release our movie in 2018 December and the first trailer will be debut in 2017 December. The first trailer talked about this universe that has more than one Spidey to let others know about the basic structure of the movie. After that, the second trailer will be released in June 2018. Finally, the third trailer will be released in early October, just a few months before the movie is released. This will be the last trailer that we put out to let the people know we are coming soon and remember to stay tuned. Next, I will talk about the advertisement and publicity era. We're planning to have a presentation at CinemaCon to offer the studio to kick off the publicity portion of the campaign, offering press and industry insider in attendance a first look at footage from the movie. The promotion activity will start around to the release date at New York Comic Con. There will be include showing off the crowd 35 minutes of the footage. The cast and crew also appear to talk about how unique the story was and what people could expect. We also include a sneak peek footage from Into the Spider-Verse in the Venom movie, hoping to reach those audiences and keep them connected with the Spider-Man franchise. We also plan to have a new Spider-Man game for PS4. Now, let's move to the advertisement part. We will run advertisement on Twitter with a series of short videos like this. Short video will also run as pre-roll on YouTube that can introduce people to Miles Morales and other characters to raise the attention of the audience and also keep the discussion of our movie. There'll be 4 posters that we going to show up. I can say that we do a great job of showing off the visual look of the movie and introducing audiences to the notion that this is not your ordinary Spider-Man movie. Of course, we will place the poster on billboards where located on highways or in highly popular places. Besides, we also have the movie poster board outside the cinema to let people take pictures with it. Last but not least, we do have cooperating with other companies. First, we have McDonald's, which will offer Spidey toys inside the Happy Meal. Next, we also collaborate with LEGO. They're going to publish a series of Spider-Verse LEGO. Besides, we also work with MBO. If you watch the movie you will able to get the limited merchandise from us by using your star point. If you are fans of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and of sports shoes, great news for you. Adidas Malaysia had announced a launch of Adidas celebrity sneakers that are based on those worn by Spider-Man. We also collab with Nike. I bet when these Nike shoes start to sell, it will come out with a win-win situation for both of us. This is all for my part. Thank you.